what can you let go of? And I was making these big bowls. This is 2 feet diameter, 2 feet tall. And this was this was 2002, 2003, 2004. Yeah, this is my brother David. And this is one of those moments in life where shit happens. Okay, so David got diagnosed with MS at age 48, and he died at 52. Really quick, went through. And he lived in LA in Palm Springs, and I lived in Massachusetts, and I'd come out and visit him. And I talk about this because this is real stuff. This is like, why do you make the work you make? Well, this is one reason I make the work I make. So we would have conversations because MS is a disease that can be in remission for years and years and years, and then stuff happens. And with him, it went very quickly. So he had to he was very active. He loved people, he collected people. He had families of people around him all the time. And he had to slowly let go of people. He had to say goodbye. I love you, but I just can't hang out with you anymore. It takes too much energy. He had to give up work. He had to give up everything. And there are these moments where there's big transitions. And he did it with incredible grace. And I would fly out and see him. And we'd have these conversations. And it was like, how can you do this? I mean, doesn't this kill you? And he was totally at peace. Totally at peace with it. And the conversations were all about how do you let go? How do you give up? But you're not giving up. You're just moving on. Okay? And so I would take these conversations and ask that about my work. So all this stuff was interrelated. So do I need to make that mark? Do I need that extra bowls? Do I need that, one other thing? How can I just reduce the amount of information down to its essence? Because in effect, that's what he was doing. He was reducing everything down to an essence. And he died very suddenly, and we didn't know it was going to happen the way it did. And I had a huge show that I was about to have. Everything was greenware. It wasn't fired yet. But the show was about 6 weeks away, and I was going to cancel it. And I was a wreck. And my wife told me, you can't do that. You have to do this. Do it for him, kind of thing. And so I had to figure out a way to do that. And the way I came to it was I decided that the whole show would be white. It would be kind of an homage, if you will. Take everything and reduce it down to kind of no color, just light. And that opened up the world. And so out of that came this big body of work, which I call the White Series. And that just was a huge pivot point for me. So this is 2005.
Is this wood fired?
No, this is all gas. So these are all, this big. That one. Yeah. Scale shot. So, it's a life moment that just radically shifts how you think about things. That stuff's real. So this is, this is how I load kiln. It's kiln room. And then some pieces, in the wood kiln. I was talking about 4-foot drips.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you use it. This pot was in a show, and a young woman came up to me, and this was kind of weird, but it was really interesting. And this young woman, she goes, I've never wanted to have kids, but seeing your work makes me want to feel what it is like to be pregnant. That's pretty powerful. So this is loading. So you get a sense of scale.
So those are glazed completely?
Glazed completely. That's raw. I'll fire one raw one every couple of years. Okay, and then going back to drawing. So it's always, one's always informing the other, so it's this kind of flip. It's how do you take information and try to explore it as many ways as you can, get into the different levels of it.
Are these your drawings?
Yeah. So this is the cover on that book.
So on your pieces, how many glazes are you working with?
No, everything's one glaze. Yeah. Everything you're seeing is only 4 glazes. It's just the atmosphere and yeah. That's one glaze, which is front and back, hot face, cold face. On a gun. That glaze and that glaze are the same glaze. This one's fired in a kiln in Florida, this one. That one is fired in my kiln. And so in Florida there's sodium in the wood. So copper goes blue instead of green. Okay, and then the latest stuff. These are a series of bullets. So this is what I'm doing here. Those were greenware glazed, and then this is fired. These I very rarely photograph, just because it's like there's only so much you can do. And then platters. So somebody here, I can't remember who it was, said they studied rights in Madison. This was fired in Don's last kiln.
There's a moment in that box and also apartment right before the overburst.
Yeah.
The surface
Yeah,
tension.
the surface tensions. Yeah.
That's before the box,
So where will these bowls be shown?
Some of these were in Sika. A bunch of them have been sold. So. And some smaller pieces. When you have a wood kiln, you got to make pots for all parts of it. So it's like there's one section that I can put a piece that big to that big, and then there's another section that can be that big, another section could be like that. So that becomes the formal strategy or a problem to then solve in the work. So it's like, okay, what can I make that's in this scale? And then that becomes a whole exploration. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So loading is like, imagine a river with all these different sized rocks in it. That's what you want. Just big and just move it around. So this is a stream bed. Okay, so I kind of look at this stuff when I'm trying to figure out that stuff. So it's a glaze. Another stream. Another glaze. So this is how do you find analogy? These are some balloon, they call them balloon bases.
So if it's one glaze, how do you get all those different drips?
Well, there's 4 glazes. And the drips are wood ash viscosity of the glaze over time and heat. Pardon? Oak and pine. Yeah, pine for the first 2,000 degrees, 2,100, and oak after.
You said you put salt and soda in one of the chambers as well?
In the second chamber.
Your work's in there too?
Yeah, but it's all little stuff.
Oh,
I put some of the big bowls in there,
okay.
but I don't put this stuff. Okay, and then the latest stuff, this is Archie Bray Foundation. I was up there in 2014. And this is where I took the circle and just made it an oval. So that first move is an oval instead of a circle. And these are the pieces that came out of that. And then, because we were only there for a month and we were trying to fire this stuff and everything, they all blew up. But I got what I needed. I got the information I needed. And then came back to my studio. And then this is kind of what I've been working on this year. So these are kind of coming from those. That's the spray booth. And that's how we load them into the kiln. So I have a pallet jack forklift. And then strap them. And then the one on the right, that's all those marshmallow wads. And then you just lower it onto that.
Is it something on top of that? It's like a wad, but something under it?
Clay. So what that does is you put wadding underneath and then a solid wad on top. And then when you set the piece down, it all finds its equal. You don't have a high point or a low point. It'll only compress as far as it needs to. Okay. And so I do that so the bottom is above the shelf, so it gets heat under there, so you don't get big cracks in the.
What is the weight of one of those pieces?
That's probably 150 pounds.
Is it wad clay?
Are those lots
Those I don't find.
Are those lots bisque or just for the atmospheric environment?
Bisque.
The clay you use, it's the same clay body or a wad clay body?
Wadding is a different clay body.
Oh,
Okay. So that's the glaze kiln, that's fired, and that's this was at Encita, Sherry Lady Gales. That's another one. And then this is the last series that I've been working on now. These are the ones that I haven't finished yet. And so these are like little chip and dips. So this is again, how do you solve a problem? You know, these are going to be enclosed forms. So where do you put the hole? Right? Because if you don't put the hole, they'll blow up. So you can drill a hole under the foot, but if you do it like that, now you see how everything's starting to ventricle? Okay, so imagine a pepper. Okay, so the inside of that is like a pepper. And the big rib that comes up is the arch that holds the form. So you have these huge cantilevers coming out. Okay. Yeah, so you have these huge cantilevers coming out in space and all the weight's going down. So if you don't put those arches in that come down to that center chip and dip, you know, then so there's no weight on the outside wall. It's all going down towards center. And then you have the hole, so you don't have to poke it. And the hole's underneath. So problem solved. So these are the last ones. Okay, and then I throw this in. It's my wife Nancy Train Smith, and she's a painter and a sculptor. And you know, when I'm here, she's holding down the fort at home, and she's been doing it for years. So I always put it in because it's like a lot of the stuff I couldn't do without that support. And then it's my daughter Lila, just an amazing young woman. And that is this group of studio assistants I've had over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And I have an internship program, and young people come work with me for 2 years. And totally screw them up. And some of them decide they never want to work and play again because it's way too much work. You know, it pops the bubble. But others of them just get jazzed and just keep moving on. And they've all been fantastic, and they've all made it possible to make the amount of work I make and get it out there. So I always show that.
Is there a sign-up list?
And then this is just, you gotta have a little fun while you're doing it. That's the
Ice bucket challenge.
the ice bucket challenge.
So you can lay the inside of those big ponds.
Thank you.
Let me get all this out of the way.
Okay. Going. That's getting good. Oh.
Is that video? For you?
Okay. I don't think anything posted like that. I don't think anything.
No, that's what I'm saying. Move it. It was
Yeah, I don't know.
it blocks mine.
They will go to five. Yeah. Well, you can put that one on the floor. I'll need it later. Is this in your way? It's probably not. I'll try to.
Oh, okay.
Where to put it?
Big money, big money. What? Whoa. You want me $1 to raise that?
No, I'm good. Okay, I'm gonna make some tea more. Okay, so, you know, there's there's something about a cup that's incredibly powerful, okay? And cups are objects that they obviously, fulfill a need. You want somebody to drink, you can pour a cup and drink it, okay? But there's so much more potential for them. And the trick for me is how do it's kind of like, I make this big work, right? And people respond to it, but most people can't have it. It just costs too much money. So, and think about this in terms of artists who like, why did Volkers do prints? One reason he did prints, besides the fact that he liked to work two-dimensionally, is that it was accessible. It's like you could buy a print, though you might not be able to buy a stack. You could buy a print of the stack. And painters do this all the time working in printmaking. There's these ways artists work to get their work to the people who want their work on all different levels of economy. Okay? And you can go down, you guys have the Christo wall out here at one point, right? Well, he funded that by drawings. So there's something about working kind of in another media, another scale, another thing that gives accessibility. Okay? The trick is that and what I hope for is that what is in the big work that people respond to is also in the little work. It's not separate. It's like, how do you bring those two together? So it doesn't matter what the scale is, but what people are drawn to in the big work is also in the little work. It's like everything's there, it's just here. It's in a scale, it's in a much more intimate scale. And so that's why I make cups. And the tea bowl in ceramic history and ceramic context, and especially American context, is this co-op. It's co-opted from the Japanese. And it happened in a moment in time. It happened as soon as Hamada came over in 56 or 54, whatever year it was, and did his little tour. And everybody started making tea bowls. And this whole kind of tea culture arose in the United States. Well, I'm not Japanese, and I'm not part of that culture. And so I don't want my work to kind of be in that world. But I like tea, but I don't drink much of it. I drink coffee. And I live in New England, and I love chowder. Chowder. And so, I make these bowls that are in different scales. And the little guys I call whiskey cups. And they're very specific for this kind of, it doesn't matter if it's whiskey, it could be apple juice, it doesn't matter. But it's where, and again, this has to do with time. It's create something that makes you slow down and enjoy the moment you're in. Okay, so ceramics has a great potential in this because it's tactile. So you're getting information from a lot of different places. Okay, so if it's a cup, you're getting it from your hand, again, weight, feel of it, how it fits your hand, all that stuff. But you're also getting a taste of what's in it. Okay, and as you get older, you realize that it's worth spending an extra $40 to get a really good bottle of scotch and drink this much of it than it is to get the thing of Jack Daniels and drink the whole thing.
Different reasons for living in the moment, though.
And so the idea of like having a fine wine or a fine liquor is to savor that moment. Okay? And if you're doing it with somebody else, it's even better. And so the cup becomes a conduit for that experience. And that's what interests me. And it doesn't matter if it's a cup of coffee in the morning. You know, my wife and I have this ritual where we live on this estuary, this river. So we look out right the window, and there's this river right in front of us. And the land on the other side is protected. It's all green. So there's not a house in sight. I mean, you go 180 degrees that way, you don't see anything. And it is exquisite. And this was luck of the draw. And we spend probably an hour every morning having a cup of coffee in bed, waking up to the day. You know, it's like when you're unemployed, you don't have to have an alarm clock.
Quit bragging.
Well, it's like, how do you find ritual? You know, how do you find these moments? There's, I guarantee it doesn't matter how you're living, there's a place in your day where you can find a moment, you know. And so the cup becomes part of that moment. In the morning, it's coffee, in the evening, it's the little shot. And that's why I need them. It's like, just a little. So, these are little.
Actually, I think I turned it back on. The switch in the front.
So I try to, you know, so I use the language of the big thoughts and the small. Fire them in the same way. They like drip all over the place. I got a grind the bottoms, got a diamond to them, the whole thing. Every kiln I fired, put about 100 in, and I get 30. Okay, so huge amount of loss. Because the glaze just moves. The glazes. Some of these are chinos, those don't, but a bunch of other stuff does. And they come out. They're in the wrong spot of the kiln. You got to fire them another time. You have to fire them 3 times. Some piece of crap falls off the ceiling, lands in the middle of it. I can't tell you how many pots I've lost with just a big glob in the center. You know. So, but it's about a third. Okay. But that's part of it. That's the game. So I don't worry about that. And when I make these, I always make them right before firing. So I've been firing in June, and I've started. So it's like every day I'll make like a dozen, and they're like end of day pots. You're either first thing in the morning pots or end of day pots. They're not middle of the day pots. And they are, and you need to make a few before you get going. And it's a very kind of quiet time. It's like I want to disassociate in many ways. So I could listen to music, or I can.
Do you do them in individual pieces, or do you do them off the huge chunks?
Individual.
So this would be quite a test for you, Chris, being in the middle of the day and all.
I don't usually do this.
Well, we have music playing for you in the background.
Yeah.
It's almost work.
So I make about 3 different sizes. You know. Where'd that towel go?
Behind your sculpture.
Again. So Chris, can you go through those tops and off the top? One by one?
Can't hear you.
She asked if I don't do these off the hump, I do them one by one. And again, I do them one by one because I'm in no hurry.
That's good.
You know?
I'm just.
I don't know if it's good, but it's what I do. So
I'm just asking because you said you do 100, so kind of more production. More.
well, I do like 12 a day.
Oh, probably.
That's what I can get on a board. That's what I do on a board at the end of the day. It's like I'm tired of, it's like the day's done. It'd be really nice to go home, but I'll just make it. And there's something in that moment that's very relaxed, and you just kind of give in. So I'm not kind of trying to direct too much. And every day's board is a little different. So doing it in one run, you tend to do the same moves over and over and over. But when you change it every day, the move starts to change every day.
So you talked about reflecting, you talked before reflecting your bigger work in the smaller work. Does it ever happen the other way?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you saw, but in the slideshow, did you see the big porcelain bowl, the orange one that I said was 2 by 2 in that, where there's a big bowls in that? I'll start with there.
It also, that's,
So it's kind of like, what if you made that 3 feet tall? Let's
So
see.
while you're decompressing and compressing the clay, you're reflecting it.
Balls.
What is your work day or your work week like in terms of hours?
It's when you work for yourself, like I found that it's like going to the studio it's the only place anything happens. It's like I have to be in that space. It doesn't matter if I work in that work. I could be doing paperwork. I could be doing email. I could just be I could be doing email at home on my couch, but I don't. I go to the studio and do it. It's like, how do you build real ritual and how do you build routine into a lifestyle where no one's telling you what to do? It's like I don't have a boss that's telling me to show up. I'm not going to get in trouble if I don't show up. So I have to make that happen. So the only way for me to make that happen is just to do it every day. So I go in around 8:30 or 9 and I come home around 5:30 or 6. Probably at least 5 days a week, but sometimes 6.
Is your studio right in your house or is it?
No, it's about 2 miles away.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I used to have it in my house. I used to live at the studio, and then we bought some land and moved over there.
Chris, since you've been,
Yeah. So you just stretched in with your finger and make your dent.
since you've been around since the 70s, have you seen that? Well, I just started doing clay like 10 years ago, and people are saying it's coming back or something. At least my professor said like back in the day it was huge, Have you seen that, or where have you seen ceramics sort of go since you started? Is it coming back, or?
Well, it's I was all this stuff is just lost, right? It's like you're in your own time. You know, so who knew? You know, I'm going to school with a bunch of kids. And the kids turn out to be Akio Takamori, you know, Arnie Zimmerman, Drew Solomon, Stan Welsh, Judy Manellis. These are all like major people in the 80s and 90s and still are. You know, and they're just your classmates. Who knew how you got in the same room together? Just luck, you know. And we were there at a time when stuff happened. I mean, it was just the time. You know, it's a different time now. And it's one of the reasons I always talk about ceramic history whenever I do these things, because it's like, okay, you know, let's have a little context to why a teapot being abstracted in 1980 was kind of important. Because everybody takes it for granted. But you were like really pushing the ball there. You know, there was no thought that this was going to be successful. Yeah. So so that time period was very exciting because all the stuff was breaking down. It's all down there. You know, so what's new? Well, you got the digital. Okay, and that's like the Wild West. It's like 99.9% of it is crap.
Yes.
It's all about the technique. It's all about that. It's not about the thing that has to exist outside of it. Someday it will be. You know, whenever new technology comes in, this is what you go through. You make a lot of crap, and then out of that rises something really kind of interesting. But you got to make the crap. So there's that world, which I have no idea where that's going. It's the technology's trying to be figured out. People are trying to figure out how to use it. And then, but there's a disconnect on one level because you have to like actually do the work on a computer, you know, and then translate it to the making. You just push a button and it makes it. So that asks the question of where does the hand memory go if we go that path? You know, how do we lose memory of the hand in making things? But there's a whole group of artists working in that world where it's like directing rather than making. That's cool. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, and then there's, you know, I don't know where studio pottery is going. Where the studio pottery is kind of it's like preaching to your own choir kind of thing. And so everybody who's buying the pots are the potters. You know, so you have your own demographic and everything. But what's interesting is you have a bunch of young people now that are starting to move into the design world. So their work is all geared towards design. So just the way they photograph their work. You know, in my world, you photograph your work, you get a gray sheet, you put it up, you isolate it, it's that. And there's this group of young kids who are doing it. They're like photographing their work on a wood table with a flower. It's all about style. You know, and what does that mean? It means it's like, I want a house that looks like that. I want my apartment to look really cool. So I'm going to get this bowl and put it on that table and put a flower next to it. You see what I mean? It's about design. It's not really about the essence of what that thing is. It's about what it projects about you, which is a real different place. You know, none of my generation thought about that at all. You know, but a lot of young people are thinking about that. And they're using the studio pottery world to make it, but they're trying to go outside of the studio pottery world. And in order to go out, they're going into the design world. So they're, you know, they don't want to show in a gallery, they want to show at archaeology. Or whatever that is. Anthropology.
They sell their designs and then they get named.
Yeah, you know, Molly, that's just a perfect example. And she's, you know, it's all great, but it ain't art.
I'm the one who wrote the article in ceramics.
I didn't read it. It's
Yeah, I was the complaint.
oh,
about
good.
it.
Oh, cool.
Why is that in ceramics monthly?
No, well, I think it has value in being there, but it's just don't compare apples. You know, it's not apples to apples. It's apples to apples. So there's a whole body of work that's being done and made for that world, which is all great. But it's not, it's kind of, it's in the design world, which is different language. What?
Corporate art.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different thing.
Can you have
There's
both?
not a Vulcus in that world. It's not an Arneson, it's not a Ferguson, it's not a Sullivan, there's not a,
That's a survival issue for this studio, because the demographic is moving up, and what happens is that demographic moves up, up, and up, and nothing is coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard issue. I mean, it's in my world, if you want to sell work, you hook up with a gallery, you sell through a gallery. It's all the young people coming out. There are no galleries. That world's closed. So where do you sell it? So they got to figure out this whole other thing. And that's the Wild West we're in. And I have no idea where it's going. I think it's kind of exciting. I've got thoughts about it. Kind of cranky old man thoughts. But it's just, it's just because of my experience, But the flip side of it is, it's like go, do it. It's like, this could be really exciting. What could come out of this? I haven't seen it yet, but I see vestiges of it. I see little moments of it. But I don't know where it's going as a movement, as a direction, as a play is going to be.
Don't you think they had that same conversation though when Focus and Arneson and other people basically turned the ceramic world upside down from what it was? And
There's always, it's generations.
how it wasn't art anymore. It was just a lot of constructed junk at the time. It was pretty much dismissed.
Well, it was dismissed and it wasn't.
Well, it is, but it's the same way, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, wherever there's a paradigm shift,
Yeah.
you're going to have supporters and you're going to have detractors. I mean, you're upsetting the apple cart. But the apple cart here is being upset because the system that supported it has collapsed. It's absolutely collapsing.
There are periods of history when where the money comes from and supports it changes radically.
There's a lot of formula in the valley.
I'll tell you a funny story in a second. Where'd I hit it?
Right there. Still purposeful. That's the Walnutcreek Eagle. So I was in LA, I don't know, a year ago, and I'm at this party and John Mason's there and we're talking, and those old photos of Mason and Vulcus, and they've got these big pieces and they're moving them into the kilns and all this stuff, and a few years earlier, John was up at Watershed, up in Maine,
which is an art center up there, clay center. And he was working up there, and I was asking him about it because he had the book, that iconic book of the clay thing in the 60s. And the cover is a picture of him and Soler and everybody pushing a piece into the thing. And there's all these amazing photos. And so again, think of the time, 1956, 57. And it's like, how did they know to take pictures? Because it's not like they had an iPhone. It's like they had a Brownie camera. Okay, so you didn't really take pictures back then. And these guys photographed everything. They photographed all of them working, they photographed the whole thing, which is pretty damn conscious. And so I said, how'd you guys know? And he goes, we were doing something important. We knew it. We documented it. We knew it from the second we did it. Okay, so fast forward, and we're at this party, and I'm kind of railing against, in education now, you have all these schools are dropping kiln building. You can't build a kiln, you have to buy the guy, or you have to buy the blow, something like that. And so, what's lost with that? Okay, so that's coming from a programmatic, bureaucratic, litigious stance. We don't want a kid to get hurt, so we're going to have an approved kiln. We have unions, so we can't really let you build a kiln and plumb it, so we're going to get a approved thing and just plug it in. And all that stuff's coming from outside. It's not pedagogical at all. So the result of that is you have all these young people coming up who are graduating with degrees and the whole thing, and they don't know how to fire a kiln. They don't know how to build a kiln. They don't know anything on that end of it. They can put a pot into it and they can program it, but that's about it. They don't understand heat, they don't understand how it moves, they don't understand any other stuff. So I'm sitting there at this table with John, and I'm like stealing. And he sits there and he looks at me and goes, "That's bullshit." And he goes, "The good ones will figure it out. They always do." And I was like, "Yeah, you're actually right."
So I guess we shouldn't ask you about acrylic paint monster.
Well, if it works, it's great. Ken Price. I mean, come on. The best artist of the 20th century.
But not, I think the kids, I think students still need to learn the basics of laser.
Well,
On chemistry.
there's an anti-skill thing in the art world, so. Well, it's kind of a real thing, and which is cool, but it doesn't bode well for clay. And so you have a generation that goes down, and as you're in a department that starts to whittle away these classes that had kind of meaning and context for learning the field. And your studio now is open to all these people coming in who just want to take something and make something and make art. They're not really interested in learning anything about the materials themselves because that gets in the way. That 20 years from now, that has an effect on these things. So it's just the way it is. It's like you can't stop it. It's like a train roll.
Will that just though that they'll go back to it'll be the lost art?
I have no idea. But I think what will happen is people who want to learn that will go back into the apprenticeship world rather than the academic. It'll reverse back that way.
Yeah.
The information's there, you're just not going to get it at a university or art school.
Has the play ever meant something to you in terms of it being this thing that comes from a factory rather than a geography that's meaningful, like digging your own clay, or the fact that the clay is just sort of something that should be used, right? And it's not connected to a place. It just shows up in a bag, you know. I don't know.
Well, there's people working who go dig their own clay, and that process is part of their whole gig. Okay, and it's owned deeply. You know, it's part of the DNA of their work. Everything spins off of it. It's totally authentic. That's great. You know, it's not what I'm interested in. You know, I could care less. Well, I can appreciate thoughts like that, people who do it, but it's like, that's way too much work. It's part of it.
Most of those artists make pretty simple work, it seems like.
Pardon?
Most of them make pretty simple pots, those types of art.
Yeah, but simplicity is part of the whole aesthetic, you know.
And the clay's not that plastic, probably.
It's like Renaissance music.
Yeah, and I mean, what's wonderful about the clay world is there's room for all of that.
I knew a potter who loved to dig his own clay and make things, but he had a whole classroom of students that would grind it up for him. So it made a whole difference, you know. He could brag about it, but he didn't really do it.
Sure.
So you have done some 3D printed pole forms?
Yeah, this is one of those things where you have to make a decision if you're going to get on the train. You know what I mean? And by that I mean, it's like, I get a phone call and they're putting together this kind of 10-day residency up in the Delta, which is in Medicine Hat, Alberta. It's right north of Montana. It's way the hell out there. It's about 3 hours from, where is it? I can't remember. It's 3 hours from somewhere. And the thing was to a friend of mine, John Balistreri, who teaches at Bowling Green. He developed a printer, was a grad student, that is a dry printer. So it prints like a Xerox machine. So he didn't develop the printer, he developed the clay body and binder. Okay? And it's all about that. In any printing process, usually it's about the clay. And so the idea was to invite a group of artists up, and John would bring up the printer, the tech would come, and we would design objects for printing. And that's the train. Like, do you want to get on that train? And it's like, what the hell do I care about this? Really, it's like, this is not about my work, I do not care about it, I'm not interested. But there's this plane ticket dangling in front of your face, and you get to hang out with your friends, and it's going to be interesting. So you say, okay, I'll do it. And then you stay awake at night going, oh God, what do I do? Because you don't want to make that. The whole idea of 3D printing is to do something that you can't do. So I had to think of kind of the door in for me. And I just had my show was still up at the Fuller, my retrospective. So it's like 35 years of work. Okay. And so it was like, okay, how can I use this process to talk about the ideas I'm interested in? So the door in for me was to say, okay, how do people kind of viscerally respond to my work? Okay, they do it basically two ways. You either kind of touch the piece. And by touch, I don't mean like this. I mean like you rub it and you do all that. Or you put your head in it and you speak or sing or something like that. Sound, because of the resonance. I had a show at the Milwaukee Art Museum for MCCA way back, not way back, a couple years ago. And I had 3 pieces in this big gallery, and it's all this really great ceramic work around it, all fragile work. And the only guard in the whole place was next to my work to keep people from touching it and putting their head in. Really, I mean, he was there for the whole time. And people would come up and want to go, and so I said, okay, that's the door. And the thing, you know, I understand about touch, and, you know, because that's kind of what my work is about, but I've never really explored sound. So I said, that's the door in. So I hired a singer, this wonderful woman who was just an incredible voice. And we put microphones in the bottom of all my big pieces, and then she sang these little ditty phrase things into the pots. And we recorded the whole thing. And so now I had digital sound waves of her voice in different volumes. So part of the idea was to see if the volume changed the sound wave for the same phrasing, for the same voice, which it did. And so then what I did is I took the sound waves and we took them up to Canada. These are just digital prints. And then on the computer, in the CAD program, we 3-dimensionalized them and made them into spindles. So it'd be like the spindle of a chair. It does kind of that. And so that became the coil. Okay. And so then we told the computer, make a wall of 160 coils. And then push a button, and it's like, bam. And now you have this big fence. The fence is all these vertical coils. And then you say, okay, make a circle of the fence, and now it's a cylinder. And then you go and start bending it, folding it, stretching it, pushing in on it, pulling out on it.
So you manipulated them after they were printed?
No, I manipulated them on the computer. And I'm on the screen, sitting there, and I'm telling the tech, I said, go like that. Get under that thing. And we had a great time. And so anyway, and the problem with 3D printing is that you can only print to the scale of a plenum, of a tray type thing. And so I had about 8 by 8 by 8 thing to print on. And I didn't want to make a model for something. So I chose T-bowl because you could be an accurate scale. So the reference was 1-to-1. It wasn't, oh, that's a nice 4-foot vase that's only this big.